the effect of James Bond and being in an Aston Martin since 1962, wherever you go in the world, it is fascinating. Formula One, it's expensive for us. It's expensive to run the team. But the reach of F1, CRM, data, digital, real-world experience, and then this personal connection with the company, that's how you make it work in luxury.
We are thrilled to welcome Adrian Hallmark, the CEO of Aston Martin, whose distinguished career has taken him through some senior leadership roles at Porsche, Bentley and Jaguar Land Rover. For those of us interested in brand, strategy and innovation, his journey offers us fascinating insight into how a world-famous company balances heritage with modernity, crafts a distinctive identity in an increasingly crowded market, and adapts its leadership and design philosophy to the expectations of a global audience. His perspective is especially relevant today, as Aston Martin continues to define what it means to be a modern luxury brand while staying true to its remarkable legacy. Please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Adrian Hallmark. So, starting here, Aston Martin's identity is steeped in heritage. How do you keep within that luxury market? How do you keep that legacy relevant, to today's global audience?
Well, thanks. First of all, thank you for inviting me here, Ruben, and everybody that's organised this. Great that you want to hear about a traditional brand in such a fast-changing and modern world in which we now live, AI-enabled, as we talked about a few moments ago. But I think, for me, heritage is an important part of any luxury brand. I always said that, especially, Porsche was probably my most formative part of my career. I'll come back to Aston just in a second, but I'll start with Porsche because the same pattern for me exists all the way through the experiences that I've had to date. That company was founded by a man called Ferdinand Alexander Porsche, who didn't like any of the cars that were available for sale, and none of them met what he dreamt to drive, so he built his own. And from that, in his single cowshed in Austria, it became one of the most iconic brands in automotive before he passed away even. And if you look at the Bentley story, Walter owned Bentley. 1919, the company was founded. It went bankrupt and then he started again 4 months later, but that's another story. And he started the company because he was an engineer. He helped develop a solution for the Sopwith Camel aero engine that was falling out of the sky and killing more RAF pilots in World War I than the Germans could. And by this innovation, he made them safer and we dominated the airwaves. He got a bursary and took every penny he had and created a car company. And within 11 years, had won a Le Mans 5 times and created a brand that was seen as a real contender to Rolls-Royce. So all of these companies, like Aston Martin, like Ferrari, like Porsche, like Bentley, they start off with an individual with an unrealistic view of their own capabilities, an unpragmatic view of what could be achieved, and somehow they achieved it. And not always in a linear, calm and wonderful way, but they got there. That's life.
And what does British luxury mean to you? And how do you sort of communicate that within the sort of Aston Martin branding?
I think the first rule about communicating British luxury is don't mention the B word. We don't have to use the word British. If we never said luxury or British again, and we just said Aston Martin or Bentley or Rolls-Royce, people would know it's British luxury. And what we need to do as a company, and it's something we do quite well, I believe, is give cues to the way we do things. I think my favourite example, if you take two of our car and the equivalent Ferrari or Lamborghini even. I've got a problem in that I love all brands and all cars. Yeah, I'm a freak. So I love the Lamborghini Urus. But really, should I be driving a Lamborghini Urus? If you saw it as a set of clothes, I don't wear Lamborghini Urus. I don't really wear I definitely don't wear Rolls-Royce. I don't really wear Bentley. It's not me. I much prefer less Baroque or showy things. I don't mind selling them and turning the company around, but it's not my dress sense, if that makes sense. And all luxury brands are basically a way of expressing your inner personality and what you stand for. So the way that we do that is implicitly we're luxurious and we're British. And if you look at our SUV, which is very sporty, 727 horsepower, best on the track of any car that's built, including the Ferrari Purosangue. But the character and the look and feel of that product is totally different to a Urus. It's totally different to the Purosangue or the Rolls-Royce Cullinan. So we do a lot of our communication through the dress, through design. And that's a key and vital expression of both the heritage and a future positive look of where the brand could be.
Amazing. Thank you for that. And in a market where many brands claim craftsmanship and performance, what truly differentiates Aston Martin?
There's no zero sum in this. So I'll use competitive reference points to position how we achieve exactly that for Aston. So if you jump in the Vanquish, the Aston Martin Vanquish, it's about £300,000. If you can't afford one now, I'm sure you all will with your education, your determination and drive. It's about £300,000. Continental GT from Bentley is about £275,000. The Aston has more power. The Bentley has got a hybrid system. If you jump in the two cars, the Vanquish is about 400 kilos lighter than the Continental GT. It drives exactly the way we dreamt the Continental GT should drive when I was at Bentley. Agile, dynamic, totally sure-footed, and this sense of excitement and energy and dynamism that makes you feel alive. It doesn't scare you, can do, but it doesn't try to scare you, but it just makes you feel energized, young, and you want to go and enjoy it. You jump in the Continental GT, it just makes you relax. It's still a really fast car, but the character is just totally relaxing and you feel zen. And when you hoof it, it goes really quickly, but you don't really want to do that. In the Vanquish, you can't help yourself. So the way that we keep it alive, first of all, is in the personality and the way the object behaves. So design is the first appeal, but the behavior and the dynamics and the technology that's in the vehicle and the way it's delivered, and even the Vanquish, which is a V12 front-engined super GT, 835 horsepower. The Ferrari 12-cylinder is a similar concept. Engine in the front, 12-cylinder engine. It's almost the same playbook as ours. But you drive the two cars, they feel totally different. They look and give you a totally different feeling of what you're interacting with. And then finally, the craftsmanship. So I think Bentley are the benchmark in some ways. Aston is less decorative, much more sporting, supportive and functional, but still with levels of craftsmanship and technology in the way that we bring materials and handwork together that is on par with Bentley, but not as much content. It's not as baroque. It's much more slimmed down and much more purposeful. So it's these small choices in this crowded 6-brand segment, and you can put 6 of the brands together, the same product category. If you all put the SUV side by side, they all interpret the same concept in quite a different way. And that's what customers love.
Amazing. Keeping in line with the sort of marketing and branding questions, how do partnerships, for instance, in design, film or fashion, help shape and extend the brand's image?
Well, I mean, everybody's heard of James Bond, whether you like them or not. A little anecdote, my first day in the job was something that I've stopped, which was an event in Venice where we paid 8 Hollywood megastars. It was the Biennale in Venice, the big film festival. Daniel Craig was there getting his award for Queer, and he was very in character. He got the full moppy hairdo and his white suit and everything, and he was with us on the evening. Got my photograph taken with him. It was fantastic. We spent a fortune to entertain 100 people, most of whom weren't customers. 10% of them we were giving cars to, and it cost us millions. And it got us some coverage. But if I look at the effect of James Bond and being in an Aston Martin since 1962, wherever you go in the world, it is fascinating. And it's not about the secret agent that murders people that people find attractive. I could even open it up and ask you why you think people associate the strength of our image with the strength of James Bond, but I won't, to save a bit of time. We can talk about it later. It's this notion that there is something out there that is so elegant and aspirational at one level, but on the inside is the most brutal, potentially violent, dangerous, and capable object, biological object you could possibly imagine, like superpowers with this veneer of elegance and sophistication that is aspirational. And customers, and this gives you an idea of maybe the way I work, and I'd encourage you to do the same. I love data, I love AI, but I don't love any of them as much as meeting people. So in the first 3 months in the job, I went to the China, Tokyo, Singapore, West Coast of America, East Coast of America, Florida, France, Germany, and the UK, and met about 450 customers over breakfast, lunches, and dinners with translators, and just talked to them about what they thought about Aston Martin and Bentley and Rolls and Lamborghini. Every single culture, whether the 25-year-old millionairess in China to the 71-year-old Elvis MAGA fan in Los Angeles, male, right wing, they all describe the brand in exactly the same way. Exactly the same way. And it's all around that imagery. And they use James Bond as the surrogate for what it means. But when I see an Aston, I admire the car. I know it's potent and that it's strong. And I love that image. I don't want to be as showy as a brand X or RR. And I don't want to be as sedate as the brand B or something else. And for them, Aston is the perfect positioning. It's this elegance and brutality and sophistication. And in the car sense, technology, craftsmanship, Britishness, luxury that you don't mention. And it's that image they buy into. Final anecdote. I won't use the family name, but an heiress of one of the biggest luxury fashion houses in the world, 34 years of age, at Christmas, saw a DBX in a Swiss ski resort, and through a contact in the company, asked if there's any chance that they could try one between Christmas and New Year. We sent my car to them, and they tried it for a few days. Response: multi-billionairess. It's made my Christmas. I know what it feels like now to be a Bond girl. That was it. And so I wouldn't like to only have Bond as our imagery, but it's a surrogate for that level of otherworldliness that Aston represents. And we have to protect that, but also make it real and accessible, durable, fun, and functional.
Wow. And how does the sort of storytelling maintain that image? I mean, alongside James Bond, really?
You don't have to. I think the products that we launch, first of all, they have to inspire. So I'd go right back to design. And then the technology has got to be commensurate with the proposition. So if you're offering a £300,000 car or a £250,000 SUV, when you touch it, when you drive it, when you look at the specification, the technology that's in it, it's got to be perceived to be worth more than the individual sum or the sum of those individual components. It's got to have a conceptual integrity in terms of the way it's put together. Then it's got to have a dynamic integrity and a point of view, and this attitude that I talked about and the way it behaves and responds to the driver. And then the whole experience that goes with it has to link back into that feeling. So if you start from the very top, if the brand is a person, if it were James Bond, this personality trait, then it's got to be tough as hell. Whatever you ask it to do, it's got to do it without blinking. It's got to respond, and it's always got to be reliable. It's also got to look as elegant as anything on the road and better than most. And when he turns up to the top events, he gets pride of place at the front. And all of that, the design, the product substance, the driving experience, the whole lifestyle experience that the customer gets, the way they get treated when they're in an Aston Martin, this all reinforces that sophistication. I've made the right decision. I'm in the right brand for me. And this is 360 brand management. It's critical.
So how do you really reflect those sort of values in each stage, from purchase to aftercare?
I think it's difficult. Difficult. It's, if anybody studied distribution or worked in distribution, retail, it's really, really complex. I mean, making cars is complicated. Managing the retail experience is even more so. And I won't use us as the benchmark, actually. I won't even use Apple, because they're not luxury. They're premium and they're expensive, but they're not luxury per se. But if I look at some of the big groups and the successful groups, LVMH, Richemont Group, Kering, etc., and you look at how they curate image, experience, the training of the people, the processes that customers go through, the way that they're interacted with, this is all absolutely detailed thinking. It's all based on psychology, and there are aspects of it which I don't like. So shall I talk about one of those?
Definitely.
So who likes to see the queues outside the luxury stores? Who likes to be told, before we allow you to spend £30,000 on this watch, you have to buy these 4 for 20,000, and they all look crap. And then we'll invite you one day, and it could be 10 years, to buy the £30,000 watch that you've dreamt of and that you could afford, but you just can't have. Yeah? Winds me up. Now, some customers, that's me. Some customers, it's like the hunt. Right. If you're not going to let me buy it, I'm going to get one. Yeah. Whatever it takes, I must know someone. The rules of 6 degrees of separation. I must know someone that works at Patek Philippe. Oops, I let it out the bag. For example. And they get one. Or they pay 2 or 3 times list price to get one. And then you create this overinflated marketplace, which one day will collapse, maybe only temporarily, but then people dump the product. It drives down the perceived value of that product, and then they wait and they build it all back up again. So this sadistic marketing kind of trend that's occurred, I think there are limits to it. There are some customers that like the hunt. They like to be. My favorite ever article in the Sunday Times magazine was in 2002, because I helped create it. And it was a journalist that used to do top 10 places to be seen in London this Christmas. And the number 1 place to be seen in London in 2002, I was at Bentley, just before we launched the Continental GT, was on the waiting list for a Continental GT, because we hadn't launched the car yet. Number 1 place to be. So I think there are positive examples of being on the waiting list for a Birkin bag, for a Nautilus watch, for a whichever object that you want. But if it's not paralleled with an engaged relationship with customers, where you know who your customers are, you know the ones that aren't selling these products on for 2 to 3 times the price, and potentially undermining your brand in the future, taking them away from your loyal customers that actually want to keep them, collect them and own them, and maybe want to pass them on, as the tagline says. If you've got good customer contact and you know who they are and they get first dibs and they're on the VIP list and you've got constant contact, that's fine. But that's not always the case. I'm lucky. I've been in some big jobs. I buy some luxury products. I'm not a billionaire or big multimillionaire, but I enjoy nice things. But there's not many brands that are good at systematically nurturing customer relationships. We aren't either, but we have spent more than 10 million on CRM in the past 4 years. We do have, I think now, a world-class system. We've got the top 2,000 customers by spend, but we've also discounted the ones that have sold cars quickly, like David Coulthard, for example, who made £500,000 on his Valkyrie. Good luck for him, no complaints, but he won't be getting first offer of the next special car that we do. It will be to people that do keep them and do support us and use them and break parts and buy them from us, because that's what we'd like to do. So we've got the 2,000 list and we've deduped it. We've taken out the people that we know buy to sell. They will be our obsession. I want to be in contact with any of them at any time, and we want to make them feel like part of the family. So I think CRM, data, digital, real world experience, and then this personal connection with the company. That's how you make it work in luxury. You can't do that in mass marketing.
Wow, thank you. And personalization is another sort of marketing method that's used a lot in luxury. How do you balance that with scalability, and what does it look like in sort of today's luxury market?
Is anybody studying engineering? Right. So I'll use, if I may, I'll go back to Bentley again, because so I joined Bentley in 1999 the first time, and I went back in 2018. So the first time I was there, sales and marketing, and we created the strategy, the product proposition, and then the whole brand proposition to take it from 800 sales a year to 10,000 sales a year in a 6-year period, when it worked. And in that price bracket, there were only 3,500 cars sold per year globally before we launched the Continental GT. And when we did 10,000, there were only 15,000 cars sold in that year. So we had 2/3 of that price band. That was 100,000 to 150,000 pounds. Back then it was a lot of money. It's now the equivalent of about 220,000 pounds. Okay? The reason I say that is those 10,000 cars, they were all black, grey, silver, blue or green. Yep, 75% of them. On the inside, they were black, magnolia or tan or blue. 2018 to 2024, if you walked around the factory, unbelievable. The willingness of customers to express themselves, totally different. Now, why? If you go back and look at any research from the 90s and 2000s, we'd just been through one of the biggest recessions for decades in the early 90s. We had the tech crash and the bubble in 2001. And there was a belief that the end of conspicuous consumption was just around the corner. No one would ever want a sports car again. No one would ever want a luxury vehicle again, because everybody wanted to hide their wealth. Anybody seen TikTok? Instagram? We have gone bonkers. In the past 10 to 15 years, we've gone from this timid, introverted buying behavior to the most hedonistic, consumptive buying behavior I've seen in my 35 years in business. It's mad. In a great way. Now, the reason it's a great way is that all of that comes with a price. But I asked about engineering first because at Bentley, we were the first to industrialize low-cost personalization. So what do I mean? If you took a base car, I say base car, £185,000, all of the components in that vehicle were engineered to be able to be conceptually broken down into child parts, all the trim on the interior, and reconstituted with different levels of content. And all that complexity was done in trim shops by people with machines. And it was all done to tack time and all done just in time in sequence. So it's like a bakery. If you imagine the cars coming down a band outside, production line, and the sewing shop and the wood shop and the trim shops all behind you, all the cars were scheduled, all the seats were scheduled, and they popped out just to the right point on the line when the robot picked them up and helped the assembler put them into the vehicle. It took no more time to assemble that vehicle down the line, whether the car was £185,000 or £300,000, same car. Okay? All the complexity was in the handwork back there. So you can run, the big cost is the production system and the engineering, the child components. And because they could be trimmed and adapted without affecting the main industrial process, the cost of that vehicle, apart from materials and a bit of labour, which is a fraction of the cost of the car, was the same as the 185. So you get two products, one that you sell for 185, one that you sell for 300, but the cost difference is maybe 10, 15%. That leverage is what's made Ferrari worth more than the Volkswagen Group. To put that in context, the Volkswagen Group makes and sells 7 million cars a year, and it owns Porsche that makes 250,000 cars a year, and Ferrari sells 15,000. And its market capitalization is bigger than the Volkswagen Group. Because with that leverage, plus the specials at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 million pounds each, the gross margin and the return on capital and the return on equity is mind-blowing. And that's what luxury is about. So personalization, thank the god of digital for TikTok and Instagram, and this consumptive culture. I don't know how long it will continue. I don't know how it will evolve exactly, but it's a phenomenon. It's a generational shift.
Wow. And in line with your TikTok comments, how is Aston Martin evolving the experience to target a more younger demographic?
It's really interesting that in the old days, go back to the early 2000s, there was a straight line regression analysis between age and accumulated wealth. And the only anomaly was down the little bottom left-hand corner between kind of 18 and 30 years of age, called footballers, basketball players, and a few rock stars. And if they lived beyond 30 years of age, they continued to consume cars in the future. And if they hit a tree or whatever they did in those good old days, they didn't. But the correlation was unbelievable. You got older, you got wealthier. Then two things happened. 600 million people came out of agriculture into the booming economy of China in a 25-year period. And a population of under 35-year-olds grew and accumulated wealth at a rate that had never been seen in human history. So that created a little bulge at the bottom of the curve. And China itself created a completely different reset in the consumption of luxury over this last 20 years. Then, in the old world, in the developed, formerly known as developed world, you had digital kick off, even more entrepreneurial opportunities for people because of digital bypassing the need for capital in order to be able to create a great business and be successful. So you've had this boom in economic activity with younger people in new tech and high-tech industries. And the same in America, in Silicon Valley, with all of these monolithic organizations that didn't exist 25 years ago. The wealth that has been created for younger people over the past 25 years, not only in China, but in America and the rest of the world, is unprecedented. It's got its downsides and it's got its limits, but net, the growth has been phenomenal. So for us as a company, the first thing that we need to do to be a part of that is just be there, because people want luxury products. The second, which I think Lamborghini have done better than any luxury brand in automotive, is get active in the digital media space. If I look at Lamborghini's footprint, digital footprint, it's a multiple of, it's probably bigger than the next three luxury brands combined. How do they do it? Lamborghini is a very now extrovert, future-orientated brand. Yes, you know that Lamborghinis existed before, but you don't look at a current Lamborghini and think, oh yeah, that reminds me of an Espada from 1968. Because you don't know what an Espada is, and if you Google it, it's not the prettiest Lamborghini that was ever built. And you don't want to see another one. But it's got this future view, and it's got this aspirational value because it's so out there and it's so fantastical in design language, and everything it stands for. And everything it does is cohesive. The brand ID, the product design, everything. So for me, we have an opportunity and a need to really amplify our digital footprint, as well as having the internal digital capability to contact customers and prospects. We need a fan base like Ferrari have a fan base in Formula One that is millions times bigger than the customer base. Lamborghini have the same in digital media, million times bigger than their actual customer base. We need the same, but we can have both because we're Formula One as well. So that's how we reach out. And Formula One, it's expensive for us. It's expensive to run the team. But the reach of F1, again, 10 years ago, you'd have thought Formula One is over. Electric cars, Formula E's coming, the end of the combustion engine. It's only for old guys in anoraks. Now, I went to this 75th anniversary of F1 at the O2 Arena in London. It was like a rock concert. And all they did is wheeled out 10 cars on a long, catwalk, brought out the drivers and the team owners, said a few words and pushed the car back, and then brought the next one. And as the compare said, hang on, you've all paid to come in here. The cars all look the same as last year. It's mainly the same drivers. What are you doing? And it was screaming girls. It was just screaming girls that watch Netflix. So that's how powerful Liberty Media are in terms of bringing the stories. And it all comes back to, I talked earlier about Ferdinand Porsche, about Walter Owen Bentley, about the origin of people are the key to success in any endeavor, in marketing, in creating appeal. And what Netflix have done have created the angels and the demons of Formula One. And people are fascinated. It's a bit like Traitors, just can't get away from it. And it's created this whole new interest because of the people, the human, the technological, the effort, the strive for success, and the risk that these people take. And that's how I think we get through there. It's human stories based on genuine endeavor, not just shallow clickbait.
Wow, thank you. And these sort of changing consumer values like ethics, sustainability, or transparency, how are they sort of influencing the marketing and design choices and other areas of Aston Martin?
I think I'll start with sustainability because, you probably, if anybody's looked at what I stood for at Bentley, it's quite different to where we are at Aston Martin, because that was right at the time for that company because we saw it as competitive advantage. So let me break it down. The automotive industry, like other industries, have a massive responsibility to deal with the environmental footprint that we press into the soil. And if you compare us with 10, 20 years ago, we're way better than we were. If you look at the potential, it's huge. So if I break down the value chain or the supply chain, the key enabler for decarbonizing transport is decarbonized energy. And I don't just mean the fuel that goes into the object that you drive around, but the first thing is every car is comprised of between 3,000 and 5,000 components. Those components are made from plastic, metal, rubber, glass, and other exotic materials. If all of those components are then made with carbon neutral energy, then already the starting point for that object is a lot better than if you're using coal-fired power stations to create the energy or burning natural gas. Okay, so point one. Secondly, when it comes to the vehicle itself, obviously the usage phase is another key part of the footprint, the environmental footprint. I'm definitely not anti-batteries, but lithium-ion batteries are not very efficient from a CO2 point of view at the moment. They're very heavy. To put it in context, does anybody know I'll just ask the question. Anybody know the weight of a battery in a Tesla Model 3? Anybody care? Between 600 and 700 kilos. A 2-litre diesel engine is about 80 kilos. and a tank of fuel is about the same. And the more range you need, the more batteries you need. It's not even diminishing returns, it's just inefficient. And the more battery and weight you put in, the less efficient it becomes. Yep. And they're not, they're very expensive. They're about 5 to 6 times the price of an engine. It's great technology, but at a certain size of vehicle, there's a sweet spot. And as the battery power density increases, that sweet spot in terms of width and length of vehicle, that sweet spot will grow exponentially. But we need different battery technologies for that to happen. And I don't know if you saw, there was a recent launch. I won't mention the Chinese brand, but they launched a battery with 3 different forms of battery cells, like a hybrid battery system, not an engine with hybrid powertrain, but a battery hybrid. Genius. 800, 400, 48 volts, and 3 different chemical technologies that all have different properties and that can deliver different performance to the vehicle. I am confident that with all of the efforts that are going in to develop those technologies, within 10 years, there will be breakthrough in battery technologies. But changing every car that we buy to lithium-ion batteries today would be stupid. It would. The cost, the mass, the environmental impact, the embedded CO2 in a produced BEV is a multiple of the embedded CO2 in a combustion engine vehicle before you start driving it. Then there's a break-even point. But it depends where you get the electricity from the electric car. If you charge it in Germany, which closed all the nuclear power stations a few years ago because of the tsunami in Japan and the power station that got hit, and then they built 14 coal-fired power stations, or if you're in Poland, where the renewable energy mix is so low compared with the total energy consumption, then the electric vehicle isn't very efficient. If you charge it in Norway or France, where Norway is almost 100% nuclear or renewable, France not far off the same, it's really efficient. So that's why it all comes back to energy production in the first instance. So from my point of view, number one, everything that we do in the future, the metals that we use will maximize the green content, the amount of recyclable that goes into every component that we use. We have a charter with our suppliers that by 2030 to 35, they will systematically move to 100% renewable energy if they're not already there. The good news is most suppliers, they're blue chip, and they want to get there anyway for their own credentials. Then we will make the cars lighter, we'll make the materials that go into them carbon neutral, we'll make them as recyclable as possible and reused in the next phase. And the other thing for Aston Martin, and it's not a glib statement, it's like Bentley, most of the cars we ever built still exist. And one of the most sustainable ways of moving forward is to produce less, move it more, repair it and use it again. And that's part of our DNA. We will go electric. But by the time we go electric, which is about 8 years, 10 years, when we fully commit, the technology, I'm totally convinced, will be an order of magnitude better for the environment, better for the vehicle, and better in terms of energy effectiveness or efficiency than they are today. Meantime, we keep pushing less emissions. And finally, with the biggest oil producer on earth, we're supporting a program to look at how to broaden the availability of pure renewable fuels. And it's expensive. You can buy it today. The rural household uses it in the state Bentleys. It's about £8 a litre instead of £1.40. But it's renewable, made from renewable sources. Not ethanol, but same chemical composition as fossil-based petrol. There's just not enough raw materials waste to produce enough to replace oil. But there will be for low-volume vehicles in the future and for aviation, and that renewable push has got to happen.
Wow, that's super interesting. And when you step into a leadership role at a new sort of big legacy brand, what's your first priority?
I gave you a clue earlier. It's meet everybody and see what they think. I'm no politician, but saying what you think before you know what everybody else wants, especially, and I'm a guest when I first enter an organization. And there's shareholders, there's stakeholders, there's customers, and you have to understand who owns the brand, if that makes sense. Because if you come in and say, right, I'm going to take this brand in this direction without checking with everybody where they are and where they want it to go, it's a bit arrogant. Intellectually, before I joined Aston Martin, I could see where it was positioned in the marketplace. I could see the price, the volume. I could see the product character. I could drive it and feel how it drove. I could see the customer profile and demographics. But it's only when you really understand why they do what they do and how they value this company, same with the staff and the colleagues that you work with, then you understand the culture that drives this type of performance. Then you need to find a better place for it to be and try and find the connections with the people that are there. It's partly intellectual, but I would say it's 80% emotional. And if you get that all in balance and you can articulate a clear way forward, which resonates with the majority of the people and the majority of their beliefs and gives them hope that there's something even better beyond it, it's a bit like politics, then it's magic. And even though Bentley has changed, and rightly so, beyond 100, as we called it, is probably the ultimate expression. But first time around when we took it and multiplied the company, that was successful. But beyond 100 I've never seen an organization mobilize like it. Discretionary effort in people's own times on the sustainability topics, on the future of the workplace topics, in a way that I just never imagined, because we unlocked a certain belief system in how we could lead in a certain part of the next phase of the automotive journey. That's how I try and approach it.
Oh, amazing. And for students in the room, young people, what advice would you give for those interested in managing global luxury brands?
The first one is, I think I'm just trying to work out the year. When I got to Volkswagen of America, I left Bentley. I've been with Porsche for a while. Got to Volkswagen of America to try and turn it around. Just losing $500 million a year. It was the forgotten child of the group. And I was given, all right, you fixed Bentley, go and have a go at that. And I joked then, mixed blessings. I loved being in America. I love the Volkswagen Group and what it stood for. But more importantly, it's the first car brand that I've worked in where I can actually afford every car that I sell. Why is that important? Because I'd got a pretty good track record with my Porsche experience. I got a pretty good track record with my Bentley experience, having never had the opportunity to be a customer for the brands that I turned around. So it's a great lesson in that you don't need to be a luxury consumer to understand luxury consumers. You need to be a good marketeer. You need to be a strategist. You need to be competitive. You need to think systemically about how to make things happen. So luxury, you can come at it from many angles. You're studying fine arts, there's engineers in the room. Whether you come at it from the rational perspective or the creative perspective, doesn't matter. In the end, you're there to do a job, and there is a consumer, there's a bunch of competitors, and there are profit pools that you've got to go and win. And you've got to forget all the glamour, no matter that Venice thing. I'll show you the picture with me and Daniel Craig. I haven't looked at it for about 9 months because I don't care. And I could probably list a bunch of other stars that I've met that also don't really care. Nice people, we had lovely conversations. I don't really remember them. They'll never remember me. Don't take yourself too seriously. The only thing that's serious is how to get into the mind of that luxury consumer and how to position that brand perfectly in a position where they can't avoid tripping over you and wanting to consume your products. So it's very methodical in one sense. 98% grind, analytics, hard work, fighting for resources, because luxury brands are were always brand rich and cash poor. That's changed a little bit now. So you've got to be very creative, feet on the ground, be able to live and circulate in that space and be credible in terms of your personal style and impact, but also be clear thinking enough to know this is just business. And finally, after 20 years, I was in a company where I could afford the products they were selling. Volkswagen, not a luxury brand. I think that's the anecdote I'd leave you with.
Fair enough. With a lot of experience at, so many other car firms, Porsche, Bentley, Jaguar Land Rover, what lessons tie all of these companies together?
Yeah. So and again, you look at it from bottom up or top down. First thing is, most companies are either better or worse than they look from the outside. Okay. So if they're really good from the outside, there's probably something going on. They can't be that good. I've not been in a company that's so good you think, God, this couldn't get any better. And in fact, as soon as it gets good, you think, right, what's going to go wrong? It's going to go wrong any minute, or at least I do. And companies that look bad from the outside, sometimes they're bad, but most of them are getting better. You just can't see it yet. Yep. So what have I learned from all of those experiences? Companies look better or worse than they actually are. Don't hope for perfection, because it'll never happen. And strategy is a combination of an intellectual process and a human assimilation process. And when it's well defined and executed, magic can happen. And all of my formative experiences are the result of that. And the implementation stage of strategy is the hardest work. I'm sure you're too young, but you've heard of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. The scene when the warehouse opens and you've got to go in and find the object. When you've defined a strategy and you all get excited and you think, got it, know where the brand is, know where competition is, I can see this space where we can go compete and win and actually transform this company. Then you get everybody excited, you build this high level plan and you build these strategic goals, and every year you're going to measure yourself against them. And you've got the modules and 13 work streams or whatever it is, then are going to go with it. And everybody's got a team and it's all cross-functional. We're all excited, come out the workshop and you sit down, you think, the amount of work that's ahead of us is colossal. And it's the tenacity to know that you keep that energy. It's like raising kids. It's all exciting, but now the hard work begins. And it's keeping that organizational energy and vitality and being willing to change the tack as you move forward, not change the strategy in the end position fundamentally, but you can never write down everything you need to do in 5 years and just go through a checklist. You set direction, and unlike in the past, there's two things I've realized. You do the strategy and you do your business plan. The next thing that I've learned over the last 10 years is you do a risk assessment. And many of you that are doing MBAs, you'll do all kinds of risk analysis. Project risk calculations, decision analysis, all kinds of things. You can do macro risk analysis as well. But the first thing you do now is look at what could kill us, what could knock us off track. Then rank all of those risks, not the actual events, but the impacts that those events would have, and then have a crisis management approach for things that haven't happened. Okay? I've done that repeatedly over the last 10 years. And we did it just before COVID, not because of COVID. And when COVID happened, it was unbelievable. We literally did what we'd already considered we would do if we had a problem. Now, we had to do other things as well because of COVID, and protect people and put screens up and get face masks and hand cleanser when NHS couldn't, but we could. And we didn't pay MPs to get them. We got them from suppliers. It was quite simple. So this old methodology of big lofty strategies and a business plan and go execute, great. But next thing, what could knock it off track? And if it gets knocked off track, what would you do differently and how? So that you're constantly on alert and don't just get wedded to one given outcome. That would be my biggest learnings from the last 5 to 10.
Oh, amazing. And one more question on the future before we go to audience questions. Looking a decade ahead, what does success look like for you personally? And what does success look like for Aston Martin?
Great question. And I think I'll start with the company first, because that's partly it partly answers your first question, which is what does success look like for me? I didn't need to do this one. I could have enjoyed the next couple of years of Bentley, but that's not me. Aston Martin is an amazing brand that has a rich heritage, but has never fulfilled its potential. And while staring at it as a competitor that never really gave us a hard punch, I was almost annoyed that they didn't fix it. A bit like I was annoyed when it went back to Bentley. And I don't want to sound arrogant, but when I left, we got the company to 10,000 sales a year from 800. And that was in 2005-06. I came back in 2018. They'd never sold more than that. And they had an SUV. And the market was 5 times bigger than when I left. I thought, what have you been doing? So I almost went back with, not revenge, but you can't be serious. So we fixed it. And it was almost the same motivation that made me think about when I had the discussion. They've not been consistently successful, Aston. They've had a few little periods where it kind of worked. But if you reflect back on what I said about luxury and consumption and personalization and the way that this segment of wealth has changed over the past 20 years, we have not adequately participated as a company in that boom in consumption. I can't resist. I've got to give it one last go to see if I can help this company achieve its potential. And I've committed for a period, and it's 4 or 5 years. I don't want to be doing this when I'm 70 years of age. So success would be to get it turned into a profitable position and set up for a sustainable next phase with new products that can deliver the kind of profits that the company deserves. And even if it's a fraction of what Ferrari deliver today, it would be a multiple of what we've delivered over the past 20 years. And it's possible. And we've got a roadmap to do it. And we've got a very clear strategy, a very strong business plan. We've risk assessed it to death. We're doing the crisis management already, transformational activities, cost down, CapEx optimization, efficiency improvements left, right and centre, 38 fields of action that will deliver hundreds of millions of added value, either net cash or bottom line contribution over the next 2.5 years. Similar methodology to that which we did at Bentley and I've done before, but just faster and in a different situation. So that's what success would look like for the company. The cash inflection, the profit turnaround, start to earn credible industry indexed levels of return on sales, capital and equity. And for me to walk away handing the keys to the front door to someone that can take it to the next phase and to electrification. And then I'll maybe be able to afford one of those as well, if it all works.
Perfect. Well, looks good to end there. Can we give a huge round of applause for Adrian Hallmark?